Hello and welcome to Weird Around Illinois. Since we're getting into the Halloween season, we thought it would be a good time to talk about ghosts. One thing we've never really talked about in depth before is what exactly is a ghost. Let's get weird and let's find out. What is a ghost sighting? What are the things that people refer to as ghosts? I mean, to me, the classic is somebody sees, the shadowy figure of Aunt Martha standing in the doorway. It's clearly recognizable, clearly human, probably somebody you know, maybe a little bit see-through. You could also take that to another level, and it's a humanoid shape, but you can't really make out any features. That's what we sometimes refer to as like a shadow person, like just a dark shadow.
Yeah, I mean, you can still see the outline, but you can't really make out any features.
And those would be like, when I think of a ghost, that's the first thing I think of. But there are a lot of other things too. One thing you always hear about with ghosts is orbs.
You often see them apparently in cemeteries. Where else have people seen them?
They've seen them just in fields. They've seen them sometimes in like actual haunted locations, like in a haunted hospital or a basement or a haunted house, something like that.
Yeah, and orbs, you could always just, like, if you see it with your eyes, you could always say it's like maybe a reflection, but then when you see, it's mainly on cameras that you see those, and that's why orbs are so common.
Yeah, and a lot of people will say that it's just like dust or something, or
right.
maybe flies, because it's kind of easy to fake, really.
Yeah, it is, but there are those people who claim to have seen the orb with the eye before they took the picture with the camera.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there are the ones we can't see. There's poltergeists, which are basically ghosts that move things around. They're the ones that are like ripping books off of shelves and throwing chairs across the room and things like that. There are also the ghostly sounds.
Yeah, and people hear footsteps, people hear like stuff falling, anything.
Sometimes even reports of them almost making contact with you, or just screams down the hall. Terrifying things like that.
In terms of ghosts you can see, we've heard about, not ghostly people, but ghostly cars, ghostly trains, ghostly buildings. Remember the ghost house that pops up on Cuba Road? It sounds to me like basically anything can be a ghost.
Yeah, a lot of forms.
Yeah.
And of course, you could get feelings.
Yeah, that's true.
I know that sometimes people can have a feeling like they're really cold. Sometimes people just don't have an explanation for it.
Or just that general feeling of being creeped out. I mean, if you're ever alone somewhere and you suddenly get this feeling that you're not alone, and you know you must be, but you feel like you're not.
Yeah, it's like a moment of extreme anxiety almost.
That gives us a wide spectrum of things that could be classified as a ghost, but that doesn't answer the big question. What are they? So let's talk about a few theories here. I mean, the first one, probably the most common one, is that ghosts are spirits of the departed. They're our loved ones, our relatives, our friends, our enemies that have passed on and for whatever reason have decided to hang out in the cemetery or the house or the school or the hospital or whatever.
That theory is always kind of unexplainable of like how or why that would happen, but I know that there are a lot of people who are very confident in that theory. They think for whatever reason, maybe there's a personal reason for that individual to be in that area. But yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, those are the kind of ghost sightings that I've heard the most about.
Right.
They seem very common, especially like if they just lost someone or anything like that.
Oh, well, and let me do something I try not to do on this podcast. Let me go a little bit religious on you. Now, most religions have a concept of heaven and hell, or at least heaven. Some have a concept of hell. If we were to accept that religious belief that when you die, you go to heaven if you're good, you die, maybe you go to hell if you're bad, if you're somewhere in between, you go to purgatory, or maybe for some religions, maybe you get reincarnated and come back as something else. These are all very definitive things that happen to your soul when you die. And there's not really any accounting in these religions, or in most religions, for, okay, sometimes when you die, you just hang out in the house for a while. So how does that fit? I mean, how can we make that fit if we subscribe to a traditional religious belief in heaven and hell or reincarnation or something like that?
I mean, I hate to say it, but maybe being like brought back to being almost a spectator where you really can't do much except for popping up and doing these different things. Maybe that's maybe that's a way of hell. Maybe that's some way of heaven. I really can't say for sure about any of this. We have no background at all, obviously, so it's all theories.
Yeah,
I don't know, because I've heard of a lot of them that are like nice encounters. No one's hurt or anything, so it really makes me wonder if a lot of them are from heaven.
Now, one theory that gets tossed around a little bit related to that is the idea of unfinished business. Like, before you can go on to eternal peace, you have to solve something. You know, they're either, you know, you died horribly, you know, you were murdered or something, and you have to make sure the right person gets punished for it. Or you have a family member who you care deeply about, and you're afraid of what's going to happen to them now that you're gone, and you have to do something to get them taken care of, or at least get a message to them to say that you're still watching out for them. That's often tossed around as possible ideas for why a spirit would linger before they would go on to whatever their final destination is. So another common belief that is out there is that ghosts are residual energy. I call it like an after image of a photograph. It's like, you know, this person walked back and forth between this kitchen and this living room 50,000 times in their life. And they did it so much that that's psychic energy, or that imprint of them, is still in that space. And that's why sometimes, you know, when the conditions are right, you see that residual energy of that being walking back and forth, even though their body's gone, their soul is passed on, but you know, that memory is still there.
That even could relate to how a giant house could be brought back somehow, even if it was destroyed a long time ago. Maybe there was so much residual energy that was brought up from some past that it was able to really come back because of the history.
Yeah.
It would explain, like, footsteps, too.
Yeah.
Or the sound of silverware, let's say.
That's a good point. Yeah, the most common sounds that you would hear over and over again, especially if those sounds were associated with emotion. Like if somebody were passionate about eating, and you know they always ate in the same spot and with the same silverware, and it made the same sound. I could see how that could carry over. That's theory number 2. Another theory that's out there is that ghosts are actually interdimensional beings. When we see a ghost, we are either seeing a loved one that has passed on to another dimension, whether it's heaven or hell or some other dimension entirely, and they're just somehow poking through into our space at those times when those barriers are less, or that it's, you know, not related to departed loved ones or departed people at all. It's just another being from another dimension that's passing through or poking through. And again, the barriers are lighter between dimensions at different times, and maybe we see them or hear them or feel them or whatever.
There's a bunch of different reasons why we would be able to see something at a specific time or day. It really there's a lot of reasons why it might be different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I myself have had the same experiences. One specific time why I might see something, and it gives plain a reason why it might be something from beyond, in a different dimension.
The portals could sometimes move.
Yeah.
If there's portals from dimensions, that would explain why we don't always see ghosts in like a certain cemetery, for example.
Right.
We've recently been seeing things, different portals almost from different objects. There's a lot of different variations.
Yeah, I mean, that's another interesting thing that, you know, we've talked about recently, the idea that maybe a portal isn't fixed. Maybe a portal is actually attached to an object, and maybe if you move that object to a different room or a different house, that the portal moves with it. The idea that portals are what's allowing these things to come through, though, also explains why some places appear to attract ghosts more than others. You know, like if there is a place with a fixed portal, that would explain why sometimes people see ghosts there, but they don't see it at the house down the block.
Yeah, so if they were to bring it somewhere else, this maybe different spirits, but the same amount of spirits would be going in and out.
Right. So another theory that we've talked about briefly, that is gaining popularity, is the idea that ghosts are not ghosts at all, but they're cloaked beings. Like an alien wearing a cloak, or a Bigfoot wearing a cloak, or a human wearing a cloak. And by a cloak, I mean something, if you were to picture like the Predator from the movie Predator, just that kind of shimmering field of energy where you can see through them, but you can kind of see something's there, but kind of not. That's an idea that's been gaining a lot of popularity, that a lot of times when people think they're seeing ghosts, they're actually seeing something else that is trying to hide itself.
In Expedition Bigfoot, we saw like that cloaked figure they thought was possibly a Bigfoot.
Yeah. That's why I mentioned Bigfoot when I talked about cloaked figures. I mean, and again, this is a whole other discussion, but if Bigfoots are extraterrestrial, there's a possibility they have cloaking technology, and maybe that's how they keep disappearing. Maybe that's why sometimes paranormal things are seen together. Like, how many times have we heard, okay, well, in this same spot, they saw a dog man, a Bigfoot, and several ghosts. Well, maybe the ghosts are the dog man and the Bigfoot, just cloaked.
I'd wonder why people sometimes see like kids, though.
Yeah.
Because Bigfoot wouldn't really look like that.
No, but maybe it was a, gray alien. One of those little 3 or 4 foot tall aliens.
Or it was an illusion to make you think it was some other figure.
Yeah, it's another possibility. Maybe the cloak isn't a physical cloak over the being. Maybe the cloak is actually something that affects your mind and just kind of changes your brain waves so that you don't see what's really there.
Yeah.
Another idea that could explain the nature of ghosts would be the idea of psychic projections. And, there's a couple ways to look at it. The way I kind of look at a psychic projection would be that somebody who is maybe in a deep emotional state, maybe they're missing a loved one very much. They're missing them so much that they're actually able to create the image of that person with their mental energy. And they're able to make that person visible to themselves and maybe even to others, just through the power of their mind.
Actually, that idea is related to something I was reading about called Parolia. Correct me if I'm wrong, any viewers out there that know how to pronounce that right. But that's essentially where you are not even thinking too much, but your mind is just at the right state to imagine different things from, let's just say, clouds maybe. If you see a cloud, you could see maybe a rabbit, different kinds of shapes. What if your mind is so focused and kind of focus you out of it that you can imagine different forms, whether it be a loved one or some random spirit that you don't know who it is? What if you could literally daydream what that is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's another, that's kind of a different kind of psychic projection. That's more of an inward one where you're actually creating what you want to see in your own mind, or what you're afraid of seeing in your own mind.
Right.
Kind of the classic tale of your mind is playing tricks on you.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're seeing it, hearing it, feeling it, whatever. So, are there any others that we're missing?
Not necessarily. I just want to bring one last quote that I already have here. It's by Science News Explorers. And to end it off, it basically says, have you heard someone calling your name when no one was really there? Or have you seen a face or a figure in the dark shadow? And that really got my mind thinking. You hear these different things from the back of your mind somehow. Somebody calls your name and you never hear it. So that's a perfect way of showing that it, not necessarily a hallucination, but your mind playing tricks on you. And it could get that strong that you're almost convinced that somebody could call your name. So what if it's expanded even farther to be something bigger, like a whole figure, for a brief second? It's something that I have just thought about recently, and I think it's a theory worth doing more research about.
I certainly agree. And the mind is very powerful. The mind will certainly play tricks on you, and the mind does what it wants to do. But you could extrapolate that theory even further. And you could say, what if somebody really wants to see a Bigfoot? Or somebody is really focused on Dogman? Or somebody is a true believer in aliens? Then couldn't they be creating those phenomenon in their minds as well?
It's all a matter of how much of a powerful mental state you have and how to really put that forward and almost have the hope or faith that that would happen. And then your mind would play the trick on you and that would happen.
Wasn't there a cryptid thing once mentioned that you could like imagine you could imagine it and it would come to life or something? Was it the ray?
Yeah, that was the one where we talked about it actually being created by the strong belief of people in it, even though it had never really existed anywhere. So yeah, I mean it's you're talking again about that borderline of, is it real or is it in our head, or do we make it real because it's in our head? It's a slippery slope to walk on, and it's certainly confusing to think about at times, but it does kind of answer a question that I've always had, which is, if you were to accept that some of these phenomena don't exist, why are there so many credible witnesses? Why are there so many people who are trustworthy people who either we know personally or who are upstanding members of the community? Why would they all lie about it? And the bottom line is, they're not lying about it. They truly believe what they saw. Whether they saw nothing and it was just a trick in their mind and their mind was convincing them that they saw something, or whether it was a psychic manifestation that their mind created so that they actually did see something, that would be a possible explanation beyond the obvious one that these things exist.
Yeah, if they did see it, it's considered a sighting then, even though it might not have been a real danger to them, like physically. It very well could have been a mental danger in some way. I'm not a professional in any of that, so I can't say that would be a real danger, but it's something that is worth really thinking about and keeping in mind.
Yeah. So if any of you have any thoughts on these ghost theories that we've put out there, or if you've had ghostly encounters that you'd like to share with us, we'd love to hear about it. And as always, we thank you for listening and thank you for subscribing, and look forward to talking to you again soon.